Hi, I'm Cher Safran with Share Wisdom Network and the host of the Nautilus Book Awards Author Spotlight Series. Now celebrating 20 years of honoring better books for a better world, Nautilus Book Awards continues this important mission forward to spotlight visionary books that co-create a better world and more positive future. The Nautilus Awards embraces books from a wide spectrum of the publishing industry which radiate hope and wisdom, inspiring and connecting our lives as individuals, communities, and planetary citizens. This is a vast and crucial conversation now more than ever. The Author Spotlight Series offers opportunity to increase the volume and visibility of the authors' voices as found in these empowering Nautilus Award-winning books. Author Richard Lyons is with us here today, sharing insights from his Nautilus Award-winning book, The DNA of Democracy, which won the Silver Award in the All-World Cultures, Spiritual Growth, and Development category. So I'm delighted to tell you about Richard. Richard Lyons was born and raised in the Midwestern United States. His education took him through Loyola Academy, the University of North Texas, and a graduate career at Southern Methodist University. He's been a lifelong admirer of the written word, which has led him to literary pursuits as a poet, essayist, and screenwriter. He's been involved in printing, publishing, and stage production during his professional career. Welcome, Richard Lyons, and congratulations on your Nautilus Book Award.
Thank you very much, Cher.
So great to talk with you. And I'm telling you, okay, number one, your book is fantastic. And I think it should be in the hands of every person in this country and around the world, and absolutely should be in every school. So just start there.
Well, that's very high praise, but that's exactly the target I wanted to hit in making a book that was very readable and accessible to everyone from middle high school up who has a curiosity about the history of democracy and what its foundations are, and also its essence, which is the idea of individuality.
So why did you title it, though, The DNA of Democracy?
Well, in my research, I found that there were certain traits that belong to governance of tyranny and certain traits that belong to governance by democracy, such as democracy is based in law, whereas all tyrannies are based in an individual tyrant. So they're vastly different. And as I went through the research of the work, I found that it was very consistent. All tyrants act the same, whereas all foundations of democracy are the same. They are all founded in law, which every individual has to obey in order to enjoy individual freedom.
Awesome. And you lay it out so beautifully, and there are really important historical sharing in this book. And you have an excerpt that's an audio excerpt. Can you tell us about what we'll be listening to?
Yes, I found a narrator called Eileen Stevens. She's wonderful at what she does. And we're going to be listening to the advent of the colonists coming to America and the Iroquois peoples who had been here from ages before, and how much influence the Iroquois had on our present day democracy, along with the democracies and the democracy and Republic of Athens and Rome and England, and how those converged here in America. And here is Eileen Stevens.
The self-exiled colonists sailed over vast seas, through countless storms, to a continent whose dangers and bounds were unknown. They went with not much more than what they wore, and the hope in their souls that they might find the freedom to live as they chose, free of monarchs, free of aristocrats, free of arrogant landholders, free of bishops, free of tithes, free of ancient social constrictions, free of the confines and persecutions of home. On arrival, the exiles found a people who had arrived ages before, who were so perfectly woven into the fabric of nature that they were nature's ideal arborists, trimming just enough from the life of the forests to maintain a perfect wilderness, A sparse multitude of independent peoples inhabited the northeast of America, who had one thing in common: a fierce love of a freedom and independence unexampled anywhere else in the world. Most of the tribes were matrilineal in structure. They were governed by councils whose authority was advisory, not dictatorial. One became a leader, or sachem, through a reputation for wisdom, or on the basis of merit, whether martial or otherwise, as a contributor to the well-being of the tribe. The position was honorary, not inherited or secured or appointed by any criterion other than merit. Nor were authority and position ever based on possessions or property, but rather on a spiritually noble indifference to material wealth. Wealth and merit lay in having no dependence on property, or anything else. In the view of the Amerindian, the earth itself was sacred, never a thing to be either owned or governed. The earth was of the Great Spirit, and was the Great Spirit's alone. These were a people physically beautiful and spiritually profound, attuned to the heart and harmony of the earth, living not upon her, but within her. Their egalitarianism and esteem for individual autonomy provided a sharp contrast to the Old World's hierarchies. They had no ruler in the Old World sense. As a trader, John Lawson noted of their beliefs in 1701, God made them free, that no man has the natural right to rule over another. In parallel time with the first European interactions with the peoples of the New World, intellectuals in the Old World were re-exploring their own ancestry in the Latin and Greek texts, commanding attention beyond the confines of the great universities. The earliest Renaissance-era humanists, such as Francesco Petrarch and Marsilius Ficino, the path-breaking translator of Plato into Latin, had created conditions under which an explosion of interest in classical authors, Homer and Herodotus, Socrates and Thucydides, Virgil and Livy, and countless others, rippled and resonated through intellectual circles. As the Old World's intellectuals devoted themselves to the study and further development of the liberal arts, the New World's explorers and settlers devoted themselves to the demands of survival. Indeed, while the New World's pilgrims and pioneers sought religious freedom and independence in a wilderness, Europe's aristocrats were adapting post-Renaissance humanism to structure their own classical tours, exploring the homelands of Greek and Roman heroes and philosophers to observe in their monumental ruins the architectural and artistic tread of ancient giants. While intellectuals were discussing texts of Pericles' speeches before the Athenian ecclesia, tales were returning from America, told by John Lawson and other discoverers of the great councils of the Iroquois League, held at the sacred site of Onondaga, where tribes gathered to debate issues very deliberately, with all the integrity imaginable, never looking toward their own interest before the public good. And furthermore, after every man has given his opinion, that which has the most voices, or, in summing up, is found the most reasonable, they put into execution. As scholarly tourists were stumbling over Greece's long-fallen statues, which seemed at once both divine and as lifelike as any human being, traders and explorers probing westward stretches along the St. Lawrence River were watching the ancients' living counterparts roam through forests and fields, apparently as free as any Greek had ever been.
So I was completely unaware of how many influences there were with democracy.
In America, they were profound and from many places, one being the Native American people, one being the English upbringing of the colonists, the other being the Roman Republic, and another being the democracy in Athens, and firstly and lastly, the Ten Commandments of Israel.
That is fascinating, and I like how you lay it out to how each one had their influence and how it has impacted us even today. So here's a question for you. So democracy's been around for a long time. Are there certain characteristics?
I have to correct you.
Oh.
It's been around a long time, but it hasn't been consistent.
That's what I was going to ask you. What are the characteristics, and are they changing, or have they changed?
I don't think the characteristics change insofar as a democracy is governed by its laws, which are delivered by lawgivers and legislators. A democracy or a republic is healthy insofar as the legislature is overtaken by a single individual. It becomes unhealthy, or a single crew of individuals, as in an oligarchy. If you would look at, the oligarchs of Russia, very unhealthy, because the power base is very concentrated in Putin and his associates. The more diffused power is, the more diffusion you have among individuals who empower themselves, the more a democracy functions the way it should.
The more diffused the power, the more functional democracy.
Yes.
And you use the word oligarchy, and you also write about tyranny. Can you speak to those, and what are the characteristics?
Well, as the book notes, there's a common keep of humanity that's been true throughout history, and that is the rule of the one through a few who enslave multitudes. And so you always have a tyrant, you have his crew with whom he divides the goods of power, and they restrict the freedoms of everybody beneath them. So that was true of the pharaohs, it was true of the Caesars, true of kings in Europe, true of Hitler, true of Mussolini, true of Fidel Castro. They were all of a kind.
So how does a democracy maintain that diffusion when humankind sometimes demands singular leadership?
Well, you're getting to the second volume of this 3-volume series. It's called Shadows of the Acropolis, and I'm going to chronicle how even in our democracy, it is a natural and human tendency to concentrate power and to assume power to a central governance. So it witnesses from 1920 to today how government has become concentrated in Washington, and how within Washington it's become concentrated in the executive branch, as opposed to being diffused through towns and states, people. So that's in volume 2. What volume 1 expresses is what is the definition of democracy, how it came to be in America, and how it has changed since then.
When you were doing your research, what surprised you the most?
How infrequent democracy has been, how fragile it is. It takes a very sacrificial rebellion to create, and it takes a sacrifice of self-will to maintain. You have to believe in your liberty more than you do in your pocketbook to maintain democracy, and it has to be a shared value, a shared ideal. Once it ceases to be that, it becomes fragile.
So having a shared ideal when there are such disparate beliefs and political parties and agendas, that's a huge challenge, but one worthy of aspiring to.
I go into that in the book in Madison's idea that everybody can have their self-interest and enjoy their self-interest, their self-pursuits, as long as one faction doesn't say to another, or one person doesn't say to another, hey, you must do and believe as I tell you. If we all enjoy our own interests, we're protected in our multitude of interests by a common law, common rights and common law. And that was the virtue of the Constitution.
Yes, it is, and something we hold very dear. So what Richard, do you hope that readers will take away from this first volume? And I know you have a couple more coming, and that's exciting to hear what the others are going to be including. But what do you want people to take away from this volume?
I would like them to take the rarity of democracy and understand it, and understand how it is an ideal. It's an idea, and with that foundation of knowing what sacrifices were made for the ideal at different times in history, get an idea of how fragile democracy is, and gain a real belief in it, and understand how America is very uniquely formed and how precious it is. So, and that would be the end of volume 1, and then we'd go on to volume 2, at the end of the year here.
Well, as I say, I wish everyone would read this book because that history is so impactful and it's humbling. It's inspiring to each of us to take responsibility for the welfare of this fragile democracy, particularly those of us here in America, and anyone who's aspiring to be in a democratic country.
Yeah, there's been very many people who have sacrificed their lives and fortunes and everything they had for it.
Well, thank you so much, Richard, for touching our hearts, opening our minds, and inspiring our lives in this incredible book, The DNA of Democracy. Thank you.
I thank you very much for the award, Sharon, and your association.
Well,
and I hope everybody does enjoy it.
Oh, enjoy it, and I think it will change lives. It will change our whole way of understanding where we're living and how we need to take care of this very fragile environment. Thank you. And on behalf of the Nautilus Book Awards team, thank you all.